good day, folks. Welcome back to our first episode of our double feature Saturday, live from Israel. We're continuing with Pirkei Avos with Rabbi Chaim Coffman. This is one of my favorite classes, folks, because you cannot go wrong with ethics, right? Nobody goes wrong with ethics. And who better to share it with us than a rabbi out of Israel? And I just so enjoy the energy that Rabbi Coffman shares with. He is the Energizer Bunny of Torah, and I so appreciate him more and more with every class. He makes me laugh. And more than that, he shares the truth out of Torah. So I'm not going to hold up anymore. Rabbi Coffman, how are you today? We see that you've got a new camera. You got nice color. You're looking great. How you doing? How's everything in Israel? And I'm sorry I missed you last week.
Oh, it's always a pleasure to be here. You know, this camera and the snowball I've had for a while, just never used it. So now getting a lot of compliments on the fact that, I told William Hall that, it's like this camera's like 20 years old, but it's not true. It's probably at least 5-6 years old, could be. But whatever, I never really used it. So now, there is definitely a difference. And going through a hot spell right now, it's going to be hot here for the next week. We're not even to summer yet, hitting about 38, 39 Celsius, which is almost over 100 here. So it's very, extremely warm. So everyone's taking not only precautions. Stuff. Yeah, not only precautions from from this virus, but you got to take precautions also. When you're in the heat, and especially being here, you can just get dried up. No question about that. So, got to have a lot of liquid, etc. So we're in the 13th Mishnah of the first chapter, still working our way through. And he used to say, we're talking about Hillel, right? There are a number of things that Hillel said, and then we're going to get to Shammai. We'll see when we get to Shammai. But Hillel used to say, again, remember, he used to say it was a common thing, right? That he used to say, he who seeks renown loses his reputation. He who does not, now there's going to be a lot to speak about that. He who does not increase his Torah learning, person doesn't increase the Torah learning, decreases it. By definition, we'll see. And he refuses to teach Torah deserves death. Boy, this is going to be a lot of fun. And he who exploits the crown of Torah shall fade away. So there's quite a bit to this mission, and we'll see exactly, how far we get. But what's the first part? The first part is person who seeks renown, right? He wants fame, right? He wants fame. He wants fame. He's going to lose his reputation. Now, someone who wants his name to be known, we're not looking for that fame, but someone who wants that and wants to force it on others, right? In other words, he wants to be lordly. He wants to be on top of others, showing he's God's gift to the world because he can shoot a basket. He can throw a football. He's got knowledge, right? He's got a PhD, which I heard a great rabbi say, everyone knows what a BA is. An MA is just more of it. And a PhD is pilot higher and deeper. Right? Someone says, he's got a PhD. He said, you're just jealous. You only have a BA. I said, yeah, but somebody learned one aspect of one subject. Right? One aspect doesn't mean, okay, they had to write a 100-page paper, they had to have oral exams. I'm not saying it's such an easy thing. But, my major, was history, and I focused on World War II. So imagine if I studied, from 1933 to 1940, the rise of the Third Reich, may they all be rotted and be blotted out and all that. Learning about the socioeconomic, expansion, rise of the Third Reich. Now, does that make me an expert in World War II? No. It makes me an expert in one aspect of one subject, right? But people give it like unbelievable credibility, like these people are God's gift to the world. Right? So you have to understand somebody like that is going to say, right? They're going to say, well, you have to respect me. Look at my knowledge. I'm a professor. They call me doctor, right? Whatever it is. So, but look at all that information I learned. Okay. I'm not saying that's not necessarily impressive, right? But if you learn 1/10 of one aspect of one subject, right? That doesn't mean that much, in the bigger scheme of things. So somebody wants to force their greatness on someone else or think they're so great or whatever, they're going to lose the fame. They're not going to have it. Why? Because also brought down lordliness, trying to rule over others or put other people down based on the fact that, look at all my knowledge. Doesn't the mission Pirkei Avos, one day in the next millennium, we're going to get there, right? Pirkei Avos says, right, it says that a person who learns shouldn't think they're so great. Look at all the knowledge. The last 25 years, look at all the knowledge I've gone through, almost all of Shas, almost through all the Talmud. Look how great I am. Right? Comes along the mission in Pirkei Avos, says, what are you talking about? That's what you were created to do. You really think you're God's gift to the earth? Not only that, but the prophets say how wide the Torah is, how expansive it is. And as much as we learn, you can tell this by geology and all the stuff that you did. The more you uncover, the more we don't know. Right? And someone will say, oh, but I learned Tanakh when I was a kid. What do I have to learn it now? I know so much, I already learned that. Right? That's going to be the next part, that whoever does not increase their Torah learning is going to decrease it. Right? What does that mean? You're going to say, oh, I don't need that book. I write books. Right? What do I need the book for? What do I need to learn for? The one aspect to say that I already learned it. If I already learned it, what do I need to learn more of it? So lordliness over here, a very tough statement, buries its master. It kills a person. Why does it kill a person? Because the person has gaiva. Gaiva means he's haughty. It means he's conceited. It means, like I heard somebody say once, I became who I am despite my parents. Now, I understand what they meant, right? Parents may not have been the greatest parents in the world, this and that. So I said, oh, so basically you pulled yourself out of the womb. I said, oh, basically you clothed yourself from birth. Oh, basically you did all these things by yourself. Without your parents, you wouldn't be anywhere. Right? One of the obligations, even non-Jews have an obligation to respect their parents. Right? And the Ten Commandments makes a lot of sense. Without them, you wouldn't be here. Now, right. Obviously, if they're abusive and they've done things wrong, so it might be that you don't have an obligation to honor them, which is the whole discussion. You may have an obligation, you're not allowed to embarrass them. You're not allowed to make fun of them. You're not allowed to cut them down. You have to show a certain level of respect. Even if they've been bad to you. Obviously, you have to guard yourself from either physical damage or psychological damage. That no one disagrees. But to think I'm God's gift to the world, I mean, listen to the statement. The statement was, I became who I am despite my parents. That's a pretty haughty thing to say. Yeah, it's a pretty conceited thing to say. Because that means your parents didn't do anything. Well, obviously that can't be true, right? Doesn't matter what hardships they put you through, but they brought you to this world, right? So therefore, someone who has gaiva, someone who is conceited, he's not going to learn Torah, right? He wants his name to be great. He wants people in the city to speak about, to say, oh, wow, look how great this person is. He doesn't have to sell any books. He doesn't have to go into book signing. Right? Doesn't go to Barnes & Noble. Right? Doesn't have to do any of these things. What happens? Because his name is great. His name is great by itself. Right? So therefore, without even opening their mouth, the commentaries say, he's already going to be well known. Right? So this is what the rabbis say. The punishment is going to be, you think you're God's gift to the world? You think, just because you didn't, you're not selling a book, you're not selling a video, you're not hawking something, whatever it is, and people are going to say, oh, look how great this person is. That person's going to lose power, right? That person, his name is going to go. It doesn't mean, right at that second. It could go, in a day, could go in 3 days, could go in 5 days, whatever the case is. But that honor is going to go by the wayside. I mean, there are many stories. Professional athletes got caught on film doing certain things. That's it. Payday, gone. Right? Gone, because it went viral. Totally went viral. Did something obviously they shouldn't have done. And that's it. Contract supposed to be signed shortly. Gonzo. Endorsements. Gonzo. Playing in the game. Not going to be taken back. Right? We're not even going I'm not even going to speak about the NFL commissioner and what he is and what he's done, and forget about that. But there are limits, right? There are limits what someone can do, and the repercussions are going to be that severe. So imagine someone who's built themselves up. They made it to the professional ranks. They got the endorsements. They're known as, one of the best. They're ready to sign that big contract, and they transgress Coffman's 614th commandment of don't be stupid. And what happens, they do something they shouldn't have done. They get caught, and with all the conceitedness or whatever, boom, it's gone. Right? Totally taken away. Right? So in that sense, this is what the rabbis are telling us, that anyone who runs after honor, right? You really desire people to honor you. Now, I'm not saying that people don't necessarily deserve to be honored. That's not the question. Let's say they're on the, they are legitimate. They deserve people to honor them, right? With the Torah knowledge they know and whatever. Okay, but we're not looking for that, right? Not only that, the honor really should have, what they do should really be hidden. So a person, even as great as they are, we all have an evil inclination, right? And through that evil inclination, the greater person, the greater the evil inclination. So therefore, a person can rest on their laurels, and think, oh, look what I've done in the past. Look at this. A professional athlete does not have that ability because obviously he's still going to be in peak form. If he's going to listen to the clippings of what the newspapers, the internet, and everyone else, is going to say, then the person's going to be lazy. And if they're lazy, it doesn't matter. If they have a contract, they'll be out, right? So you always have to be at the top of your game. And, if you're not, and you're just, you're reading the clippings of what people are saying, then you're not going to work that hard, right? You're certainly not going to work that hard. And then the evil inclination, when it comes to Torah, will rip you to shreds, right? Because you'll stomp all over people. I mean, unfortunately, I've seen it in my own life where people, quote unquote, think they have knowledge, or at least that they have power, and they've knocked other people around, kind of like, social Darwinism. I'm going to make my name great, even if I have to squash you. I'll squash all, come along, Walmart or whatever, and I'm going to squash all the mom and pop stores, whatever, because we have the ability to do so. We can buy in bulk, right? We can buy cheaper. We can undersell them. We can destroy them. Okay, you'll say that's business, right? But when it comes to Torah, who gives you the right not only to put someone down, because even if you have more knowledge, even if you have power, who gives you the right, right? There's such a thing called extortion also, which I saw with my own eyes, that, when it comes to Torah mitzvahs, there have to be checks and balances, right? That's why, everyone needs a rabbi, and we've spoken about that. And the importance of having a rabbi to go to ask questions, to see, like, is this permitted? It's not permitted. I am allowed to. I'm not allowed to, etc. But there are things that are obvious, right? One of the obvious things is you're not going to commit extortion, right? Everyone will agree, extortion is going to be forbidden. So how can an Orthodox Jew do it? How can someone, quote unquote, be a rabbi do it? Right? So I mentioned many times, someone once asked me, said, I saw an Orthodox Jew in a casino. So I said, okay, I never answer questions. Why did this person do this? Or why did this person do that? Even as a rabbi, he's not a rabbi, right? So they say, well, what was he doing there? I said, well, I don't normally answer these questions, but I said, he's probably gambling, having a good time. They're like, no, but he's an Orthodox Jew, right? He represents Torah. I mean, say this, but that's what he meant. He's an Orthodox Jew. Doesn't, the Bible says you're not allowed to do it, or the rabbis say you're not allowed to do it. How's he allowed to do it? I said, he's not. It's forbidden. Right? Same thing. A person's overweight, person smokes, a person does all kinds of things that are forbidden. Doesn't mean it's right. The Torah says this is what your obligation is. This is what you have to do. After 120 years, right, we're going to have enough trouble answering for ourselves. Oh. God's going to say, how come you didn't do this? Or how come you did that? Or whatever. Everything's being recorded. Right? Just like, as long as I don't blow up your system and the recording stays. Right? But the bottom line is we're going to have to answer. We are going to have to answer. I have to answer for someone else. It's hard enough we're going to have to answer for ourselves. Right? So here the rabbis tell us, anyone who runs after honor, right? You desire that honor. Honor is going to go away from you. Right? And it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense because we're not looking for honor. right? We also know, we saw in the Mishnah previously, we know that the highest level is to serve God without receiving reward. We know we're going to get reward anyway. Why should we get reward? Says the Chovos Levavos, says in Duties of the Heart and Shar B'tachon, in the gate of faith and belief, he says, you know why God gives you reward? He says, okay, the Torah says clear, you do the right thing, you get reward, right? You have this portion of the world to come. If not, okay, you're going to get punished. Why should he give you reward? The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says, this is what you're created to do. So why in the world should you get reward? I'm going to give you, tickets, 50-yard line, Super Bowl. Why should you get that reward? You shouldn't get that. The only reason you get the reward, says the Chovos Levavos, the only reason is because God's doing you a chesed. He's doing you an act of loving kindness. Because the reality is, okay, you prayed today, you made blessings, you did all these things. God, and you're going to say, I also want the tickets on the 50-yard line. God's going to say, pig, what are you talking about? You don't deserve it. I don't care if your team's in the Super Bowl. Who cares? You don't deserve it because that's what you're commanded to do. So therefore, even if a person has a lot of knowledge, how can you be gaivated? How can you be conceited? Isn't it true we're all a small, an infinitesimally small speck of cosmic dust, right? We live in a small town, in a city, in a state, on a continent, on a planet, getting smaller, right? In a galaxy, we're getting smaller. So you say, wow, man's the pinnacle of creation. Yeah, but we're really small in the bigger scheme of things, right? But we think we run the world. It's a big world out there, right? Doesn't mean our actions don't matter, right? That's a whole different thing. Certainly our actions matter, but when we think of it, in those terms, we are relatively small. Right. So therefore, how can someone ever be conceited if you're looking at the world in a certain way? Right. If you look at the world in a certain way, you can never be conceited because there are a lot of things we can't do. Right. There are a lot of things we're limited in doing. Comes to free will, other things, many things are limited. Right. I mentioned the story about this doctor. I thought he's God's gift to the world. And he got embarrassed in front of 250, 300 people because he couldn't even control his own bowel movement, right? So he says, wow, I thought I was in charge. I couldn't even control my own faculties, right? There's so many things, we're not in control. Now, that doesn't mean a person shouldn't have self-esteem, right? This is a generation, what I call the Teflon Generation, a very weak generation of self-esteem. Right, we definitely need to build people up. They definitely need to have somewhat of a chip on their shoulder, but you got to be very careful. Can't rest on your laurels. Doesn't matter. Someone once told me, Rabbi, cut me some slack. I'm holding better than 95% of world Jewry. I said, okay, let's say for argument's sake, I think you're right, which I don't, but let's say you're right. So what? What if God thinks you have higher potential? And if you have higher potential, you didn't read it and say, God, what do you want from me? Didn't you hear what I said? Early in my life, I'm doing better than 95% of world people, of world Jewry. God says, but I gave you higher potential, right? Let's play the second movie. Let's see what you could have been. Let's see what you could have done. Resting on your laurels is not good enough, right? We always have to be working. We always have to be striving. This is the time, between Passover and Shavuos. We count every day. This is the first day of the Omer, second day of the Omer, we're getting to the end. It's all about building up. What's the last day of the Omer? The next day is Shavuos, right? What does Shavuos represent? Shavuos represents giving the Torah Mount Sinai, right? That's what it represents. So you're always striving, you're always gaining, you're always growing. That's what we want. That's the direction that we want. I should rest on my laurels, because, I'm better than, I've learned and other people haven't. Well, I'm held to a higher pedestal, right? And if God says you could have reached X and you were just lazy, that is going to be embarrassment, which we can't even imagine. It's bad enough if we don't reach our potential in general, but imagine all the time we wasted, right? Imagine all the time we were on our devices doing other things when we could have learned, or when we weren't obligated to be working for livelihood and, running around, chasing our tails. Question.
Yeah, Rabbi, since we're on the topic of achieving potential and being all you can be, I have noticed a bit of a shortfall, especially in the last 20, 30 years, where people actually have in their mouth, like a fish hook, more is better mentality. And I find that there is some negatives to that as well. And I think that that plays into, say, this generation's viewpoint of thinking they're not doing enough or thinking they're not good enough. And then they have an inferiority complex and go in the opposite direction.
Right.
When they think they must have more or more is always better. I think that they're ripe for some damage as well. I know that
you're talking in physical terms or spiritual terms?
Well, all the way around. I mean, people's minds, they beat themselves up so hard thinking that they can be more, and they insert the impossible, something that is beyond their potential to achieve.
In physical terms, I understand. Why? Because they want to keep up with the Joneses, right?
Yeah.
They want to say, hey, this person has this person has that. Why am I a schlep? Why am I not, making ends meet? See, here in Israel, everyone's in the same pot. Some people better, some people worse. The difference between the have and have-nots outside, at least outside of Israel, is huge. You either got people that are super wealthy, right? And then you got everybody else that, they're either below them or struggling. But the difference is, the difference between the car you drive, difference between the type of house you have, difference between, if you go on vacation, you do anything. And, thank God, that was one thing I was never really caught up in. At least you could say, maybe that was the case when I had money. Like, it didn't really mean that much, but if you don't have, okay, so you have to deal with, you have to deal with less. But sometimes a person's self-worth is based on how much money they make, and what their status is in that doggy world. Right now, there is a problem. There is a definite problem with that because, if you're working hard, you're trying to bring, you're trying to put food on the table. Why, and whatever field you're in and you're struggling and this and that, the person has to realize where it all comes from, right? If God wants you to struggle, you are going to struggle. You could be a top-notch lawyer, you could struggle. Right? It doesn't matter. I mean, we've spoken about this. It really doesn't matter. God's the one who's in charge. Right? So at the end of the day, whatever you do, you tell me, well, it doesn't really matter. God's either going to bless it or he won't bless it. That's true. But we're not on the level where the Vilna Gaon says, okay, I don't have to do anything. God's going to provide for me. There are some people that don't have to do anything. Right? They don't have to put their best foot forward because they have a tremendous belief, tremendously strong belief in God, and God takes care of them. Now, I know some people like that, but the vast majority of people have to put their best foot forward. It means you got to work. It means you got to do something to put bread on the table, right? That there's no question. But the problem is, most people, do not follow that psyche. Most people say, this is my value. This is my worth based on how much I make or whatever. But aren't there obstacles? People have to marry off the kids. Money goes that way. People have a sick kid, or God forbid, someone's sick. Money goes that way. You can be making good money, right? A normal Orthodox family, 6, 7, 8 kids, tuition will kill them, right? Tuition could be $1,000 a month per kid, right? Whatever it is, it's college tuition. Between that, food, and a car, that's it. So if you're not making more than $150,000, you're in debt. It's a crazy thing. It's an absolutely crazy thing. Right. But again, what are we looking at? What values are we looking at? Even in the Orthodox community can be like that. And that means the values are skewed. That means the values they're getting from secular society. In secular society, values are bad. Right. I'm not saying all of them are, but many of them are. Just see what they say. Right. See what they're trying to sell. See what they're trying to portray. Right. When I was growing up, what was the big thing? Marlboro Man. Right? Smoking a cigarette, nice hat, jeans, right? Whatever it is, be like him. But we live in a consumer society. And being in a consumer society, you get sucked in. It's very easy to get sucked in. Now, you're going to tell me, I don't understand, but Torah's against that. Right? You're right. But the problem is when you're surrounded by it, it's very hard. Right? It's very hard not only to fight against that, but when a person's kids see, their friends have other things that they don't, or they travel more and do this, say, hey, how come we can't, we don't do that? Right? Now, I'm not saying, that's forbidden to go on vacation, right? Not going to go that far, right? But a person has to know what the real values are, what the true values are. Problem is, we live in a world of fantasy. It's all a world of make-believe. It's not about, the difference between men and boys is the size of their toys, right? It's not about that. It's totally irrelevant what one has and what one doesn't have. If you struggle, you feel bad on many, many levels, right? One is you're having trouble putting food on the table, and you lose your self-esteem that way, right? But the other way is, a person may feel, I should be able to keep up. Why can't I keep up with others? Why I can't, whatever. And at the end of the day, the Torah philosophy is God decrees. And if he wants you to struggle in this area, you will. And if he doesn't, you'll be successful. But it's not because if I put my best foot forward. It's not because of anything else. It's only because either God's going to bless it or he won't. Right? That really is the bottom line. Now, people don't want to admit that. Right? Because at the end of the day, they're going to say, well, I'm a failure. This isn't working. Okay. So you got to put your best foot forward. There's no question. You could try this, you could try that, you could try the other thing. Maybe you have to go to a different field, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, if God's not going to bless it, does not matter what you do. And people think, the mistake is that, as I mentioned before, someone said I became who I am despite my parents. It's because God blessed it. That's the only reason, not because your own brain power, right? You remember in the 70s, someone came up with this great idea of the pet rock. You don't have to feed it. You don't have to walk it. Guy made millions. Why?
A mood ring.
Yeah, because God wanted to make millions. What about the person who put toothpick umbrellas into drinks, right? Into liquor drinks, right? Looks very nice, fancy, this, whatever it is. Guy made a mint. Why? Because God wanted him to make a mint. That's the bottom line. It's not because, what an invention, right? What an unbelievable mind. This guy could have been a bum. He could have had 120 IQ. Who knows? But God wanted him money, right? So people say, well, I made this decision, I made that decision, I made the other. It doesn't matter. It's not based on you, right? You can say, well, I did this, I did that, I did the other thing. But in the end, it could have gone sour also, right? My father, blessed memory, would say, yeah, we made money, we lost money, right? And what was it dependent on, right? They say, made this bad decision or made that decision. But at the end of the day, where does it come from? It comes from upstairs. God's the one making the decrees. We don't want to admit this, right? Because then a person gets into a quagmire and he says, why is God bad? Right? Why is God evil? Why is he doing these terrible things? Why is he squeezing me? Because all I want to do is be a Noahide. I want to be a Jew. I want to convert. I want to do the best thing. Why in the world am I getting slapped around? Right? It's not my question. Job asked the question. It's an age-old question. Right? Why bad things happen to good people. Right? Etc. But nothing goes measure. Everything is measure for measure. So if that's the case, we don't always understand the measure for measure. But at the end of the day, the problem is, and this is why the Christians have Mr. S, right? They got a fallen angel and he decrees and is evil. Why is there evil? Because of him, right? He's the one that makes decisions. Well, we don't believe in that, right? We don't believe in fallen angels, right? That's a Christian idea. So if all goodness comes from God, as the Ramchal says in the beginning of Derech Hashem, he says in the way of God, says the beginning, God wants us to tap into his goodness. God is all good. If he's all good, what's the question? Why is there evil? Why do evil people succeed? That's the question, right? But at the end of the day, if we're doing the right thing, and most people who want to go in the right way and have changed their lives, got out of Christianity or any type of paganism, want to be a Noahide, want to convert, God is not going to make it easy, right? The system is not going to make it easy. Right? Because A, we're not looking for converts. B, even someone who's a Noahide, there are a lot of issues. Right? Who are you going to learn from? There's no communities. There's no ritual. There's no prayer. Right? There are a lot of issues. There are definitely a lot of issues. Right? I had a student of mine, one of the best students I ever had. And when they started learning by me, within 2 weeks, washing machine went, car problems, other things. They go, Rabbi, is this common? I said, yeah, just for you it happened a little bit early. Right? You think that the evil inclination wants a person to succeed? and hit the other side. Less than 20% who start the conversion process actually finish, right? So that being the case, it's going to be a hard road, and only the few are going to survive, right? So, a person has to be prepared. And just because, imagine you change your life, you lose family, you lose friends, you don't have a community, you go through all these hardships, and then all of a sudden your livelihood goes out the window. Then all of a sudden someone gets sick, someone gets severely sick, you get all kinds of issues. So you're going to say, I don't understand. This doesn't make logical sense. Well, let's go back in history. Let's go back a few thousand years. You ever hear of Abraham? Right? Abraham goes through 10 trials, 10 very difficult trials. Saved one of the best for last at 100 years old, circumcision. Right? So you're going to ask when bad things happen to good people. Right? So at the end, what happened? God says, Abe, what do you think of my covenant? What a covenant. His wife gets taken. There's a famine. He has to fight the 5 major world powers. He has to try and sacrifice his son. All these different things, that he goes through. So God tells him, he says, Abe, you don't understand. If I would give you everything, right? What's one of the first trials? Lechacha me'atzecha. Go away from your land. He says, I'm going to make you big. I'm going to make you famous. Fame. I'm going to give you everything. So the commentaries ask, where's the trial? How can there be a trial? You're going to have kids. You're going to have fame. You're going to be all over the place. You're going to be able to do what you want, maybe, what you were still doing. So the commentaries ask, so where's the trial? Now, does God tell Abraham where he's going? Doesn't tell him, right? Every step he takes with God's faith, maybe he's going to end up in Pago. He's not going to be able to speak the language. He's been bringing people closer to one God, converting the men, the women. In all this, he's been doing unbelievable things where he lives. Who's to say where he goes he's going to be successful? You're going to say it doesn't matter because God already promised him he's going to have this name or whatever. But you still got to go and leave. You got to leave everything you know. You got to leave the land. You got to leave your father's house. You got to leave the language, right? That is a trial in and of itself. So people say, well, I'm ready to sign up. Yeah, let's say he leaves you in the middle of Saskatchewan, right? He leaves you in the frozen tundra somewhere, He says, okay, that's where your promised land's going to be. Say, God, it's cold here. Got any heat? Like, what's going on? I'm in a frozen tundra. God says, don't worry about it. I'm still going to make you famous. You want to live in a frozen tundra? Probably not. Right? But you don't,
I spent a decade there.
Yeah. So there's a trial. There's a trial that he goes through. And he's not given any information. So with all the great things, he's going to get, he still has to go. Right? So God tells him and explains, he said, I was looking for someone in history to take the banner of one God, right? To take the banner of absolute monotheism. He said, if I gave everybody everything that they wanted, and everything would turn to gold, I'd have everybody lining up on the block so that everybody would come. So I'm not interested in that. I want people who want to understand me, who want to understand what Torah is and what they're supposed to be. Doesn't mean it's going to be a free ride. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy. People go through all kinds of difficult things, right? Many, many difficult things. Now, if you would ask people who changed their lives, even with the difficulty, would they rather go back to being a pagan? I don't think so, right? That the reason is because they have ultimate meaning over here, right? There's a tremendous amount of meaning in everything that we do, in that our actions matter. And if our actions matter, that means, God forbid, if there's a bad decree, whatever I do right now, the mitzvah I do, says the Rambam in the laws of repentance. The Rambam says you can overturn it. There's always a scale. It's going up and down. You have the power. You have the power. You're going to say, me? Didn't you just say? Let's rewind it. You can't. Let's rewind it. You're going to say, didn't you say before when an infinitesimally small speck of cosmic dust? You're right. But the famous student of the Vilna Gaon, Rav Elijah Vilna, Rav Chaim of Volozhin. Chaim of Volozhin, the famous Volozhin yeshiva, right? Rav Chaim of Volozhin, his epic work, Nefesh HaChaim, the soul of life. No one ever learns the beginning because it's all Kabbalah. A lot of it's all Kabbalah. But he says at the beginning, he says, don't think your actions don't matter. And how God decides when we do something, And how it gets judged, it goes up, it's spiritual, it's physical, comes back. It's a complicated thing. It's like the Matrix, right? The whole complicated thing. But that being the case, don't ever say, it says this at the beginning, don't ever think what I do doesn't matter. What's an example? One example is Adam and Eve. They eat from the tree. When they eat from the tree, they brought death to the world. God had to change his plan. I mean, he understood this could happen. So he put in, plan B. He said, all right, everyone out of the garden, right? Takes them out because he doesn't want them to eat from the tree of life. Because if they eat from the tree of life, they're supposed to die. They won't get fixed up spiritually, right? And all that. But keep in mind one thing. When he ate from the tree, all those, inside the tree were all the spiritual worlds. He explained. Each spiritual world being strengthened by the spiritual world above it till you get to God's heavenly throne, whatever that means. So basically all the spiritual worlds are in flux. So what are we trying to do? We're trying to bring the world back to before Adam had sinned. So how are you going to do that? How is it possible to do that? The only way it's possible to do that is through Torah and mitzvahs. If we do a positive thing, we strengthen that. If we do a negative thing, we make it weaker. So we're trying to get back to that. So why do I bring this up? I bring this up for one very simple reason. One act. Now, Adam understood if I put evil inside of myself and I do the right thing, right? I do a mitzvah, So I raise my soul and my body because there's always a conflict, body and soul, right? So if I do the right thing, exponentially, I get merit going against my evil inclination. So what happens if I do the wrong thing? If I do the wrong thing, then I debase the body and I debase the soul. So if that's true, God says you're 100% right. You could reach higher spiritual levels in a much quicker way. Nothing to talk about. But God chastised him and he says, there's only one problem. Problem is, I didn't tell you to do that. I didn't command you to do that. I told you don't eat from the tree. Right? This is what I wanted. I did not want you to eat from the tree. So God says, even if I agree with you, he says you did the wrong thing, right? And the Talmud tells me, God calls him a heretic. A heretic. First man ever created is closer to a spiritual being than a human, right? The greatest creation, in the history of man. And what happened? He failed, made a mistake. He made a mistake because he thought he understood better. Now, to a certain point, he did, right? He wanted to do the right thing, right? And his conclusion may be right, that if you do the right thing exponentially, you get unbelievable merit fighting against your evil inclination. Well, that's all true, except God told him not to do it. Now, not everything, obviously, is going to make you a heretic. There are specific things, right? But in general, for the first man that's created, and he's almost a spiritual being in a human body. He failed tremendously, in that sense, to the point where he brought death to the world, to the point where when someone dies, as Zohar says, he's going to see Adam first, and he's going to say, because of you, I had to go through this, and Adam nods, and that's part of his, that's part of his punishment, or sorry, that's really part of his atonement. Right? His atonement is every time someone says that, he gets a certain level of atonement. Right? But he brought death to the world. They're going, my actions, I'm not Adam Arishon. I'm not the first man. No one ever said you were. It doesn't matter. 3,000 years later, 5,000 years later, right? Whatever it is, it doesn't really matter. The point is our actions have repercussions. Right? They absolutely have repercussions. They can be for the positive. They could be for the negative. Right? One action changed the history of the world. Right? In other words, we all have to die. Death is not a Jewish concept. Right? Up until Adam ate from the tree, there was no death. Right? It's not a Jewish concept. Right? It would make sense. Have someone, came to this world to die for everything you did, but there wasn't supposed to be death. Right? So there is repentance. There is this idea of repentance, but if there wasn't supposed to be death, so what are they claiming? So you say, no, that's only after death, right? Only after death's been decreed. Well, that's true. That is 100% true, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, like a plan B. I just, Rabbi, I have difficulty imagining anything done by contingency from Hashem. I mean, I think of Hashem as knowing all about all, including every variable over all time, all at once. And yeah, when we think, yes, he put the tree in the garden, and yes, he knew the outcome all our days before one was ever formed.
Right.
But I'm learning more from the rabbis that the freedom of the will, the expression of it, choosing the right thing at that moment because of what God commanded, based on what you're saying, is so correct. But it's actually so escaped us, you know. I think, and also scientifically, I think death is much more than just the physical perishing, especially when we think about Adam.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
maybe I'll just leave it to you.
Let me tell you what the Torah says. Torah says, Genesis chapter 6, verse 5, right before the flood. He says, God saw that the wickedness of man was great upon the earth. Every product of the thoughts of his heart was but evil always. Verse 6, Hashem reconsidered having made man on earth, and he had heartfelt sadness. How can God have heartfelt sadness? Right? Remember film strips? Right? They had some goofy narrator, and they had slides. Right? The narrator would speak, then he'd go ding, and you go to the next slide, and the narrator would speak, go ding, ding, right, till you get to the end. Right? So that's my example. The world, God, in God's eyes, is like a film strip. Right? At the very beginning, does God know what's going to happen? Knows what's going to happen. In the middle, does he know what's going to happen? In the end, he knows what's going to happen, but he gives man free will. Right? So Rashi there, Genesis brings down a non-Jew comes to one of the rabbis and asks him this question. Asks him exactly this question. He said, if God knows everything, and God knows what's going to be past, present, and future, why is he sad? How can he be sad? He already knows. He knows what's going to be. So his rabbi answered him. He said, you ever have a child? He said, yes. He said, what happened when you had the child? He said, I made a big party. I handed out cigars. Cuban cigars. Right? Handed out cigars. So he says, but don't you know? The rabbi asked him, he says, don't you know? One day, your child is going to die. Right? You can live 80 years, 90 years, whatever. He says, one day your child's going to die. So he said, what do you do then? He said, but you know your child's going to die. So this person answered, I'll be happy when I'm supposed to be happy. I'll be sad when I'm supposed to be sad. Right? In other words, so too by God. Right? Man is inherently evil. Right? They have an evil inclination. But they also do good things. So when they do good things, I'll be happy. Right? They do what I want them to do. Very good. If they don't do what I want them to do, I'll be sad. But doesn't mean I don't know. Right? Of course I know what they're going to do. Of course I know what the thoughts of man are. So there's a whole discussion, the Talmud says, there's a whole discussion between the house of Hill and the house of Shammai. 13 years, I think. There's a whole discussion, was it a good thing that man was created or not? Imagine 13 years. Back and forth. Yes, no, this, that, different arguments. In the end, they both agreed. It was a bad thing that man was created. But the fact that man is created, we have to look into our actions. Right? We have to look into our actions. We have no choice. Right? We have an evil inclination. We do bad things. We have to look into our actions. If you look at the bigger scheme of things, if you were to ask God today, you say, listen, you can ask me any question. If you were to ask him, okay, in your heart of hearts, no lying, in your heart of hearts, are you happy with the way man turned out? Now, if I were God, I'd put on my George Byrne glasses, right? If I were God, I would say, hell no. It's been an absolute disaster. Murder, famine, destruction. There have been great men in history, right? No question about it, right? Certainly in spiritual terms, nothing to talk about. The whole rest of the world, been an absolute disaster. And who made it an absolute disaster? We did. Not God's fault. We're the ones who messed it up. I don't think there's any question about that. It's not God's fault. He gave us the choice to do good or do bad. So if that's the case, and you want to look at world history, we've advanced. You got a lot of technology, all kinds of things, etc. Look where man is today. That's true. Look what we know, but look what we don't know. And are we that much better off mentally, spiritually? Right? We think, you go back to the Romans and how delinquent and all the terrible things that they did in worship of the body. Are we any different? We're not any different. Come on, I grew up with these stupid commercials, Jack LaLanne. I don't know why these things come into my mind when I do your show, but I remember these stupid commercials.
Oh, he was 80 years old and fit, if I remember correct.
Yeah, right, exactly, right. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to have another candy bar, right? But it's all about fitness. It's all about the body. Isn't that what the Greeks worshipped? That's what the Greeks worshipped. And they brought all these things to the world. They brought the Enlightenment. They brought the Renaissance. They brought all these things. And by Hanukkah, what do we call it? We call the Greeks darkness. Tremendous darkness. Why? Because with all their knowledge, morality goes out the window. Right? Totally out the window. And you see, even by the greatest of their scholars, right? Take Mr. Aristotle himself. Great mind. Great mind, but he was a disgusting person. Right? Bertrand Russell, same thing. Great mind, totally unethical. So when they asked him, he said, "What? How can you teach ethics be unethical?" He said, "If I taught mathematics, expect me to be a square, parallelogram, whatever it is." Right? So at the end of the day, we say, "Oh, we have so much more knowledge." Right? Not necessarily true, but even so, are we any different than the Greeks? We're missing all their sporting events, right? We're missing, all the things that they stand for: entertainment, sports, all these great things, quote unquote, that they brought, that they brought to the world. Aqueducts, right? They brought aqueducts, the roads, right? They brought all these things to the world, right? But at the end of the day, we're not any different. We live in a Greek society. So the only question is, if I live in a Greek society, I got to change my mentality. And my mentality is that this Greek society is warped. Now, when I got to university, right, I'll make it a little more personal. I got to university, I figured, I was around more Jews. I was becoming more, more observant, more religious. And I couldn't stand, when I went to high school, the top kids, that were in my classes, they're all getting wasted, over the weekend, and some were doing, smoking pot and other things. I was like, I can't wait to get away from this. I got to university, one of the, top universities in America. It was no different. It was no different. They were just, even more intelligent animals, right? It was no, it was different. And these are going to be like possibly the movers and shakers of the next generation. And I saw this and I said, well, it's where I had a spiritual crisis. And my spiritual crisis was, I came, to learn. I came to become more observant. And I actually wanted to learn more about what I was learning about, right? So that was kind of strange, right? But at the end of the day, I wasn't impressed, right? Why wasn't I impressed? I tell my parents, they would say how come, you wouldn't bring these kids to the house or whatever. I said I wouldn't let them step foot in the door. I said that's how bad I thought these people were, totally immoral. I'm not saying I was living in Victorian England, but, compared to what these other people were doing, even if they were more intelligent, doesn't matter. When I got to university, I said either I have to see a psychologist, which I may have to anyway, or that the rest of the world is 100% whacked. I was 20 years old. That's when it happened. It was even before that, right? But I was having this struggle, and I said, this doesn't make sense. When I came to Torah, it made perfect sense. It made perfect sense for one very simple reason. I mentioned this before. Anyone who's ever been on a sailboat without a rudder, forget a motor, you go around in circles. You don't go anywhere. If you don't have Musar, if you don't have ethics, you don't have a teacher to guide you in morality, because morality is relative, right? That's what moral relativism is. You're okay, I'm okay, just don't tell me what to do, right? So morality becomes relative. What was totally forbidden in my parents' generation today becomes an absolute mitzvah. So when you go down that road, it's it make you crazy, right? Because you say, how can these people be more intelligent and they're still doing the same stupid thing? And that's what they asked Aristotle. And Aristotle said, there's Aristotle, the brilliant mind. There's Aristotle, the womanizer. Well, in Judaism, that doesn't go. It doesn't mean we're perfect. We're not perfect by any stretch. We have an evil inclination, but at least we admit we have failings. That we're not perfect. We're not compartmentalizing. Compartmentalizing is forbidden. That 100% is forbidden. Use another sports example. You take someone like Mike Tyson, not the most moral of people, and he got convicted of rape, right? Alan Dershowitz puts him on the stand, if you remember, and what does he say? He said, listen, she was in my room at 3:00 in the morning, and everyone knows I'm an animal. So what did she expect? That killed him. That absolutely destroyed him. Got convicted, right? Totally convicted. Even if she's there, doesn't mean that's what she wanted. Doesn't mean you're allowed to force yourself on her, right? So therefore, you can't compartmentalize. Okay, that's probably a bad example, right? But at the end of the day, you can't expect that. You can't say, well, I do this one day, I do something else another day. Now, we may compartmentalize. It's wrong, right? A person can learn Torah all day, then do other things at night that are reprehensible. It means that we got what to work on. We have 100%, what to work on. Again, does not make us perfect, right? But at the end of the day, if you don't have that anchor, if you don't have that, that moral background, or you're not learning from it, or you're not gaining from it, you will fall into abyss. There is no other way, and again, most people would say, come on, just eat a Twinkie. I don't know. People still eat Twinkies today. Go eat a Twinkie, watch a movie, have a beer. Like, what are you worrying about? What are you worrying about the world? You take things too seriously, and at a very young age, unfortunately or unfortunately, right? That's what drove me in this quest, because life doesn't make sense in that world. It doesn't make sense. I heard a great rabbi once say, he says, yeah, go to university and show me someone who went in and came out more moral. Never going to happen. Never, ever going to happen. Now, I'm not saying people don't have to make a living, whatever, but you don't have to put yourself in necessarily such a bad situation, right? Like that. Like someone once told me, says, you have to be more open-minded, let your kids go to university. I said, you're right. I said, I will let my kids go to university. I said, you send your boys to yeshiva. He's like, oh, I would never do that. I said, oh, what's the matter? You're not that open-minded, are you? You'll say it's a cult. They're being brainwashed. And you're not being brainwashed in university, right? The professor's not brainwashing you, to think that God doesn't exist. Total heresy. Absolute heresy across the board. There's a famous story. I mentioned this before, but while I'm on this rant, I might as well continue. The famous story of the Baal HaTanya. Baal HaTanya, the first Lubavitcher Rebbe. Right, first Lubavitcher Rebbe wrote the Tanya, and he wrote the Shulchan Aruch Harav. Right, he wrote a code of Jewish law based on Shulchan Aruch. And he had a student who wanted to go to university. So the Baal HaTanya said, if you go to university, you got to be very careful, because there's a lot of heresy there, whatever. And the student came back to him and said, listen, I've been hanging out with you, and I've been learning in your study hall for years. Didn't make me such a great, didn't make me so righteous. Didn't make me such a big tzaddik, right? So he says, don't worry. If I go to university, they're not going to have an effect on me either, right? So the Baal HaTanya says, no, you're making a big mistake. He said, the difference is, he said, impurity. He said, impurity, how can a person become impure, right? All you have to do is by touch, right? In other words, you come in contact with a dead body, you touch it, that makes you impure. How do you take in purity? How do you take in the holiness? Holiness is something you have to work at, right? You have ups, you have downs, whatever. It says, just because you were by me, it means you didn't absorb the message, right? You didn't absorb all the messages, so you went off and did other things, whatever, right? But it has nothing to do with the fact I'm righteous, or I'm so righteous, I'm not so righteous. Whatever the case is, you got to get the message, right? You have to take in the message. And if you don't take in the message, you don't work at it, it's not like it's going to stick to you like glue, right? Certainly not. When it comes when it comes to impurity, you don't have to work at it all, because impurity sticks to you like glue. There's a verse that talks about idolatry. And in this verse, it says you're not allowed to attach yourself to it. What's the language? The language is the word davak. Davak means to attach to, right? But in Hebrew, the word devik is glue, right? In other words, you don't want to be attached with it because it's going to stick to you, right? Now, idolatry doesn't necessarily mean I'm bowing down to an idol. We can make anything into idolatry, right? Anything that we give it power that really doesn't have power in and of itself. What are we speaking about here? Honor, right? Money, power, right? These things are fleeting. And even if they are fleeting, right? A person can worship these type of things, whether it comes to money, whether it comes to, sports, there are people, fanatics, absolutely fanatics. So that stuff sticks to you like glue. Doesn't mean it's not fun. Doesn't mean it's not entertaining. I don't know about the CFL, but doesn't mean it's not entertaining. Sorry, I had to get that in. Doesn't mean it's not entertaining, right? But the point is, it sticks to you, right? Torah you have to work at, whether you're as a Jew or a non-Jew. You can't get distracted, because if you get distracted, it's game over, right? And it took me a long time. To realize this, until I finally came in contact with real Torah. And then I said, so all my questions that I had growing up, and when I got to university, all went by the wayside. I said, now I understand. A Jew or non-Jew that's, not focused in spirituality, they're an animal. That's it. Yeah.
Rabbi, now I read your manuscript, and you went to college, and then you took a sabbatical from college and went to Israel and studied as a rabbi for a while, and then went back to college again. So did you not take that break in there and come back a different person? It was only 1
year. I took a 1-year break because I wanted to stay in Israel. Mm-hmm. And the reality is my parents would have killed me if I didn't finish my degree. And it would have been stupid not to finish my degree. I'd already done 2 years or more. So I figured I'd come back and finish. So within a year and a half, I basically finished my degree, and then I studied for 6 months somewhere else. I came back to Israel after that. So, 100%, because the only place I was ever happy, was in Israel. And, when I came back to the States and, trying to find like that type of community, because, obviously my friends weren't as religious, certainly not going in the direction, that I was going. So, there are a lot of humps along the way. It was difficult. It was definitely difficult because no one could relate to what I was going through.
I just wanted to say to the audience, so folks, Rabbi Coffman has written a manuscript about his life's journey, and I would really love for him to get published on this, because it is one of these things that I think benefits, especially B'nai Noach that are here in the West. It shares his life story that goes through a lot. He set it aside for a while, came back and worked on it some more and finished it, but it's just a beautiful work. So if you ever see Rabbi Coffman, you can catch him on his website on orthodoxconversion.com, or you find him on social media. Put a plug in his ear to encourage him to work on getting this thing published, or maybe you guys might want to sponsor it. It's just one of those things that I think many, many, many people will benefit from. You'll see what Hashem had done in his life and the trials that he's gone through. Very, very unique. I think everybody will benefit. So sorry, Rabbi, I put a shameless plug in there for you.
No, okay, good. He did that, not me. That wasn't my that wasn't my choice. But the idea what I went through, I don't think is so radically different to what other people go through. I just didn't necessarily grow up as a Christian, but there are a lot of very basic questions, right? And the most basic question that I saw growing up was, how in the world could people be so intelligent? I mean, have better grades than me, even study less or whatever, whether Jews or non-Jews, didn't really matter, even though the high school I went to only had a handful of Jews, right? Regardless, how could they do other things that are totally detrimental, right? Drugs and other things. And that's, that led to me, to say, well, there's an issue, not like they were religious, right? But I had this burning question that there were certain things I couldn't stand, And I only drank beer when I got to college. I thought it was like the worst thing in the world. Like, oh, anyone who drinks beer, like, the 16, 17 or whatever, they're like scum of the earth and whatever. That might have not been necessarily the right thing to think or whatever. But at the end of the day, I could not get this out of my head how that gets justified. Right. And the more I learned and the more severe, let's say, severe things, how people could decide certain things, let's say between life and death, about euthanasia, say that's mercy killing. That's okay because we don't want the person to suffer. You don't have a right to play God. There are other things involved, but at the end of the day, knowledge should change a person. Mm-hmm. They should realize how small they are and what they know, but they don't. What does it do? It just gives them a fatter head. It just thinks like, they're God's gift to the world and you don't know anything. It's like, I say about I write books. There's a quote unquote, rabbi at a funeral, and somebody came up to him and said, "Oh, Rabbi, you don't have your rabbi's book." He said, "I have one here. You can borrow mine." And this person, and this rabbi looked down on him. He's obviously much older, and he's like, "Sonny," he's like, "I don't need your book." He goes, "I write books." I get a lot of mileage like out of this, out of the story. That's, anytime I speak about, being conceited or whatever, probably 9 times out of 10, I'll bring up this story. Well, what does one thing have to do with another? The person wasn't showing him up, right? This person innocently said, I have this, you can use it. I see you didn't bring yours or whatever. And he had a right to put him down. You didn't have a right to put him down. This is what it means. Right? It's really the next part of the Mishnah. Somebody has that type of, has knowledge. He's going to say, what? I need to read your book? I need to learn more? What do I need to learn more? I write books. I already do things. I'm a YouTube rabbi. I need to listen to someone else. I could gain from listening to someone else. Right? That's the highlight of being conceited. Right? Because what do you call somebody who's a rabbinic scholar? Literally a Talmid Chacham. Right, a Talmid Chacham is a student of somebody. Is a wise person that's a student. How can he be wise and a student at the same time? It's very simple because he learns from others. Right, he's always open to learn what others have to say. May not agree, but you can learn from everybody. What does King Solomon say in Proverbs? Right, who do we learn being fastidious from? You learn from an ant. Why? Because an ant only lives less than 6 months. And every time you see an ant, what do you see an ant doing? Running here, going there, bringing things, to its hive, to its hole, whatever it is. You're not wasting time, right? Says King Solomon, you have to learn fastidiousness from an ant. He's only going to live 6 months, right? Not, at best, unless someone squashes them earlier or whatever the case is. Not going to live that long, right? If you're not going to live that long, then you can say, let me sit back. I'll eat what I need. I'll store away enough, and I'll have an easy life. I'll be drinking pina coladas on the beach. What are you worried about? I have such an easy life. That's what God put us here for. He put us here to work, right? We're going to see, lo alechem lecha ligmor. The work is never done. We're always growing. We're always learning, right? If we're not learning, we're wasting time, right? That's really the bottom line. And if anyone gets anything, out of what we've spoken about up until this point, realize there's a whole cracked world out there. You say, oh, wow, you think because, you're one of God's chosen people. And how do you know there's so many good things in the outside world? Yeah, there are, right? There are things that we can utilize. But I guarantee you, you take a look at the internet, there's a lot of Torah being given over, on the internet. Now, would you tell me the vast majority of the internet is good? No. Right? I just heard a statistic, 30%. 30%. Anyone who goes on the internet is looking at porn. 30%. That's a high percentage. Is there a lot of good Torah out there? Yes. Is there a lot of bad Torah out there? Yes. If someone's going to be on it anyway, should they be finding this stuff? You meaning good Torah? They can. I'm not saying not. Right? Otherwise, people wouldn't find anything. They wouldn't know what to do. They'd be stuck. Right? They'd totally be stuck. So social media has a benefit. It does have a benefit, right? But if you were to ask most people, if you were to ask most people, does the benefit outweigh the negative things that are out there, right? There's a lot of negative things, right? Tremendous amount of negative things there. So a person, you got to be very careful. You have to know how to navigate. There's a lot of heresy, right? They got to be listening to the right people. Yeah, you had a question.
Well, yeah, Rabbi, since you were on the pros and cons of the internet, the strengths
Yeah.
and the weaknesses, here in the West, there's a lot of talk of gun control. I mean, and I'm in Canada, and I know down in the United States, there's a lot of people that, that with the right to bear arms, and you're never going to strip people in Texas. But my point is, here in Canada, once this COVID hit, our prime minister passed some rule unconstitutionally. Passed a rule unconstitutionally based on, stripping certain firearms. And my point is, just like you spoke about the internet, the pros and the cons. I mean, even with gun control, there's pros and cons to restricting this and that. How do you feel on the matter? Or maybe I shouldn't ask such a direct question. It's like any tool. It can be used by the Yetzer Hara or not. And
it's been a great show. Gotta go.
I'm sorry, Rabbi. I just saw a parallel there that was pertinent for today.
Obviously, when it comes to that, people, when this whole thing happened, in California, and in Pittsburgh, and people are gonna pack a peace, and they're gonna, they have a right to defend themselves. There's a whole question. Forget about Shabbos and holidays or whatever. The whole question. The whole question: should people be packing a gun? Right now, if you don't know what you're doing, it could cause more damage than not. Right? Obviously,
just like voting.
If you're licensed and you know what you're doing, whatever. The problem is, how far you take it. Could there people get guns that shouldn't have guns? Could that lead to vigilantism? He said, well, of course, anyone who's got a gun could certainly, use it for a negative thing, right? There's a whole halachic issue, with a woman. Is a woman allowed to carry a gun, right? Why? Because the Torah tells me that a man can't wear women's clothes, a woman can't wear men's clothes, right? So a cross-dresser for a Jew would be totally forbidden, right? 100% forbidden. Can't pluck his eyebrows like a woman. He can't dye his face, right? All these gray hairs they just had taken off. Can't dye it, right? You're not allowed to dye it because that's what a woman does. Looking in a mirror, making yourself prim and proper for 10, 15 minutes. That would be forbidden, unless you just want to make sure you look good. You don't look too bad or whatever. You in and out, and that's okay. But if you sit there prim and propping yourself like a woman, that would be forbidden. So now what about a gun? Right? A gun is a weapon usually used by men. Right? Men are the ones that, as the Torah says, men are the ones that sort of capture, conquer. Women don't. Women are more passive, right, in that sense. Now, if you look at what happened to Yael, right, Yael kills Sisera, right? What does she kill him with? Tent peg. Why didn't she kill him with the sword? She could have killed him with the sword. She doesn't kill him with the sword because it would have been forbidden, right? A sword is a male weapon. Now, everyone's gonna, jump up and down and say, what, a woman can't carry, what if she has a Smith & Wesson, right? A nice, small, compact one made for women. The question is, what type of gun would be permitted, right? Obviously, a machine gun, probably not, right? Now, what about women, fighting in the army? Okay, we could get into like a whole ad nauseum discussion, right? Bottom line is there are certain things, women should be allowed to do, and certain things not allowed to do. But the question is over here, can a woman pack a piece to protect herself? Right now, you're going to have a problem because we have this prohibition, right? So great rabbis of the last generation, made distinctions what type of guns, so to speak, and what it's really needed for. If if they feel they feel strong or whatever because of all these attacks, before this virus that was going on, all these crazy attacks all over, right? So, women wanted to be protected. So, certain things they'd be allowed to use. Maybe not everything, but, most people most people are not aware. The fact that a gun has, for better or for worse, doesn't matter, it's a male garment, right? It's considered like a male garment. So not all guns, may be permissible. It said, so then someone will say, well, like say here in the land of Israel, there was always a standing army, right? You had a standing army, you had men fight, you had men sitting and learning also, because the army wouldn't be successful unless you had people learning. You needed both. You definitely needed both. What if it's a milchemes mitzvah? What if it's a war that's an absolute mitzvah to go out? Then everybody goes. Everybody goes. No one's sitting and learning, right? But we're not there, right? We're not even close. Even with all, God forbid, terrorist attacks that happen here in Israel or whatever, it's not that type of war, right? So you don't need all the people, forget about that, right? But at the end of the day, it's not that type of war. Now, you got women joining the army also, and it's a much bigger problem. Because what happens if a woman gets caught by the enemy, abused, etc., then, there's a legitimate issue. They're not saying it should happen, and whatever happens, war happens, and there certainly could be, could be a lot of that, but that's only one issue. Right, that's only one issue. What about men and women together in the army? Right. What about her using guns? I mean, there are a number. There are a number of issues. So so again, if everyone had to go to war, then that wouldn't be an issue, right? The only question is you have this prohibition. So carrying a gun in general, it has to be first of all that the person knows what they're doing. They have to be trained, right? They certainly have to be trained. And I think they should also be psychologically, evaluated. That nothing to talk about because you don't want someone to overreact, certainly. But, it may be needed. It certainly may be needed for, people coming to synagogue, pack a piece, right? But again, it could lead to other things. It definitely could lead to other things. If someone's really trained, they know what they're doing, it's one thing. Right, definitely one thing. Question would be, are they allowed to do it on Shabbos? Someone asked me this question a few years ago. Someone lives in Chicago, and Chicago is a very dangerous place. And, the whole question, are you allowed to carry it on Shabbos? Right? If let's say there's no Erev, there's no rabbinic way to carry, let's say, and even if there was, would I be allowed to carry it? Right? In other words, you're allowed to carry things that are permissible. Right, you need a prayer book. A woman goes out with her kids. You need a stroller. Things that you need. Things that you need. What about something that's forbidden? Right, a gun should be forbidden. Right, but you're not going to say it's part of your clothing. Right, even if someone, let's say, was a samurai warrior or whatever, maybe it's part of his clothing because he goes out that way every day. Right, but if you don't go out that way every day, it's not part of your clothing. So you can't say it's clothing. Right, the whole question on Shabbos or a festival, should you be allowed to carry it? Or not. You need great rabbinical authorities to discuss this. To what point? But there's a story of somebody that got held up. Walking to synagogue, on Shabbos, and they had no money. Right, so they had to try and explain. The guy's like, "Listen, I'm just going to shoot you." It's like, I don't have money. I don't carry on the Sabbath, whatever. And the guy left him alone. So yeah, I guess he put. If he would have pulled out a gun. Maybe things would have been, maybe things would have turned out a little bit different or whatever. But I mean, it's a dangerous precedent. I'm not saying people shouldn't carry guns. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that it could lead to all kinds of, it could lead to tragedy, no question. But obviously my answer would be that, someone who's going to do it certainly has to be trained, no question, and they have to see if they're psychologically stable, not just that. Right. They don't have a record. They have to see that. You have to see that they're responsible, they're normal. They have to be checked out. You can't just do a background check and say, okay, yeah, here's your gun. I think there's a lot of laxity, when it comes to that. Even if they want to say we're more strict and we're more this and whatever, I think there's a tremendous amount of laxity. Too many, way too many guns on the street. I don't think there's any question. About that. So yeah, I guess ending the show, that would be my answer. That would be my answer to that.
Rabbi, we still got about 15 minutes left because I do have to transition. But this Mishnah, intriguing in a lot of respects. Did we cover anything about one who does not learn deserves death,
No,
or
no. We
one who
didn't even,
uses a crown of Torah for his own benefit?
we didn't even cover if he doesn't increase his Torah learning. We can do that.
We got 15 minutes or 20 minutes if we need it.
All right, so we'll continue. So, someone who doesn't increase their learning is going to end up forgetting their learning, right? It's one explanation, simply because person doesn't review, right? If you don't review, how are you going to remember, right? So therefore, if you don't increase and review, you'll forget. Others say it means they will die early.
Right.
This is not
before their time.
Yeah, this is certainly not a good thing. And again, this is again through gaiva, right? They're being conceited, that they're telling you, I know everything, right? I'm Mr. Know-It-All. I don't need you. I write books. What do I need to read this book? I write books, right? It's beneath them to learn. Why is it beneath them to learn? Because what could really be added to their learning? I already know everything, right? One of my rabbis once said, he learned with a great rabbi, and he said he learned this tractate like 100 times. 101 times, 110 times, whatever it is. How could somebody like that look at it like he never learned it before? That's a very hard thing to do, right? That's certainly, a hard thing to do, right? But who's to say that when a person learns, even if he learned it before, and even if he, learned it 100 times or whatever, who's to say you're not going to learn something, right? In other words, you have to review, there's no question, but who's to say I know everything? Right? Who's to say I've gone through everything? Who's to say, well, maybe don't look at it like this, or maybe don't look at it like that, or again, if someone's learned it a lot, they already know what all the arguments are, right? But at the end of the day, if we don't continue to learn, and we say, oh, what could really be added, then what's the person going to do? You're not going to learn, right? You're certainly not, you're certainly not going to learn, that much, because obviously you could say, well, I write books. I give these classes on YouTube. I am the YouTube rabbi, whatever. What do I have to gain? What is someone going to teach me? I don't know. Right? That is saying that you know everything. That'd be a similar thing to say, that one of the worst things a person can say is, I prayed so well today, God's going to answer my prayers. Right? That's what we call in the rabbinic literature, we call it iyun tefillah. Right? Like delving into prayer. Now, let's say that's true. Let's say a person prayed very well. Does that mean God's going to answer him? But what's that going to do? That is going to bring about God's ire. God's going to open up his file. He's going to say, really? This guy didn't get distracted. He prayed with all his soul. He prayed with all his might. He totally was devoted to me. Let's open up his file. The only time we mentioned before, the only time you ever, and we spoke about this, I think, with the evil eye. Maybe I spoke here about it, that nobody wants their file opened unless it's open on Rosh Hashanah. When God opens up your file, you have no choice. Right? Jew or non-Jew, on Rosh Hashanah, his file is opened. God is going to judge. He's going to judge you. He's going to judge the world, right? In general. So now it's going to be hard enough to pass that test. Very, very difficult to pass that test, because God's going to look at everything we did. All our thoughts, right? All our actions. It's going to be hard enough to pass that test. You do not want God to open that file any other time. You don't want to invoke that ire, because who's to say we're going to pass? Imagine you go in front of the King of Kings and say, listen, you owe me. You owe me what I want and what I said, because I prayed so well. I would have a lot of fun with this person, like, firing, like matches between his toes, light him on fire, like, come on, let's see you dance a little bit. You're coming in front of me, the King of Kings. I know the thoughts of all men at all times, right? Like the Matrix. I know all these things. You want to tell me you came in front of me today perfect? 100% perfect? You want me to really judge you? One of the worst sins a person can do. You might think, oh, idolatry's bad, immorality's bad, murder's bad. Yeah, these things are bad, right? We're not saying not, but you're telling God that you're God's gift to the world, and you owe me because I prayed well. I don't want to be around if lightning strikes, right? That is the ultimate, that is the ultimate, and being conceited, and thinking that God owes you, because if He proves you wrong, then yeah, in this case, you could be, in big trouble. It could also mean, why are they afraid of learning more? Because someone may see that the learning is skewed, right? In other words, they'll be seen as something they're not. They're a fraud. And you know who you are. There are a lot of frauds out there, right? And they call themselves rabbis and who knows what. The punishment is they die before their time, right? Because the reason is because the purpose of living is what? To learn and continue to learn. So therefore they don't learn. They rely on what they've said, hundreds of times before. They're not learning anything new, right? And what are they afraid of? If they learn with somebody, they're going to see that their mindset is a little bit off. Now, some people won't care. Some people are so conceited, they'll say, it doesn't matter. I can go against the world. I hold this. I can be this. And everyone else is wrong. I really know. And don't think that people don't exist like that. And they say that, no Orthodox Jew knows I'm the only one. All right? That's obviously a crock. And I've seen it. It's pretty incredulous to see, person calling out other people, say, I'm the only one that knows. And everyone's afraid of this and that. It's not true. Totally not true. So people put other people down because their learning is skewed. And if it's skewed, it means there's something wrong. And if you listen to a class by them and you come out more confused than when you went in, that means there's something wrong. Right? It means either there's a flaw in what they say, which is probably true, right? It's also probably they don't know how to give it over, even if it is true. Not everyone has the ability to give over and be clear, right? But if you come out more confused, most likely is that the person giving it over himself is confused or herself is confused. It means they don't understand the totality of what they're giving over. Yeah.
Well, Rabbi, I have seen people in this day and age play the antagonistic stumper and try to make you think you don't know what you're talking about by playing stupid with you're not making any sense. You're being confusing. You're not clarifying enough. And the reality is, you couldn't say it any clearer or be any more.
Right. So I've had this. I did I told you this before. I did a Q&A last week about Judaism being a cult. So I've been going back and forth with somebody. Basically, he's a Karaite. So it's like no way to win. And so basically, I said, just answer these questions. Just answer. What does the Torah talk about over here? What does it mean? Forget rabbinic interpretation. Tell me what it means. Show me, in Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 11, when it says to listen to the rabbis. What does that mean? Give me an answer. Don't tell me, the rabbis this, the rabbis that. We don't care. Not interested. Doesn't matter. So no matter what you say, you're talking to a brick wall, right? Which is true, right? But the thing is that, my bottom line was, okay, you're not going to give me an answer here. You want to make fun. You want to say things. Fine. But yours doesn't work. Someone told me recently, or a while ago, and sorry, recently, that there might be like 50,000 Karaites in the world. Now, I only thought there were like 100, 500. Okay, let's say they're 50,000. Doesn't matter. They can't pass it down. Right? Compared to how many Orthodox Jews out there, nothing to talk about. Right? We got a 95, 96, 97% success rate to next generation. There's nothing to talk about. So my bottom line is put up or shut up. Show me that it works. And if it works, good. And you can pass it down. If it doesn't work 98, 90% of the time, or 60% of the time, or 70% of the time, that means it doesn't work. That's it. I don't care what you believe. It doesn't matter. It doesn't work. You can give me any philosophical mumbo jumbo you want. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. In my And my bottom line is Judaism has to survive. And God says many times in the Torah, it's forever. So if it's forever, it's forever. That's it. Right? Okay, certain things may change because, at the end of the day, we didn't do what we're supposed to do, so some things go by the wayside. That may all be true, but you have to give a logical argument. And the logical argument has to be, okay, what does this state, I saw last week, I think it was last week's Parsha, that says that there were there were Torot. What are Torot? Torot means it's more than one Torah. Right? Why isn't it the plural? Isn't there only one Torah? So Rashi says on the spot, again, we'll go to oral tradition. Rashi says, why does it say it in the plural? Very simple. There's a written Torah, there's an oral Torah. Now, if you're a Karaite, why does it say it in the plural? Very simple question. Why does it say it in the plural? You're a fanatic. Don't call me a fanatic. Tell me what it means. Tell me if it's in plural, it has to mean something. There's only one Torah. Right? So what does that mean? I mean, there are a myriad of examples. They're not going to answer me on any of the examples because they don't have an answer. You're going to make it up as you go along. Okay? But if you make it up as you go along, there is no way you'll ever pass that down. And that's the bottom line. Does it work or doesn't it work? And is it true? And if it's not true, okay. But show me where this isn't true. We only have rabbinic interpretation. We don't have anything else. Right? And on Mount Sinai, there had to be a running commentary because the Torah doesn't make sense without it. And if you go through the prophets and whatever, all the difficult things, doesn't make sense otherwise. You can't read it at face value. A lot of things in the Torah you can't read at face value either. 80% doesn't make sense. Right? But again, even if you're not going to believe all those arguments, you're going to say the rabbi's this, the rabbi's that. You can say whatever you want. What do you do with the Torah that says, again, Deuteronomy chapter 17, that says that you have to listen to the rabbis of every generation and whatever they say, right or left. What does that mean? It means whatever you want. Okay. Right? But, if you're not going to tell me what it means, then show me you can pass it down. And if you can't pass it down, I don't care what philosophy you say. We can argue about philosophy till tomorrow. Right? If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. That's it. Right? Wow. So you're 100% right. You can argue up to a point, right? But if you're arguing with a brick wall, there's no point, right? Because people are not that open-minded. Because if they're open-minded, till the brains fall out. They can say, all these crazy things what the rabbis do, and the rabbis make you go through and jump through hoops and all that. The laws of Shabbos, laws of family purity laws, and all these different things. That's all true, and there's a lot to know and there's a lot to detail. But you understand why? Do you understand why you have these laws? Do you understand why it's not adding to the Torah? Or subtracting to the Torah,
Right.
That's what it means.
The key. Yeah.
Right? And if you don't understand that, and you're not willing to understand, there's nothing to talk about. Right? There's 100%, nothing to talk about. But again, I'm very big into, most people know, what works and what doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, what do I care what your argument is? It doesn't work. 50,000 of them in the world, big deal. They have any impact? They do anything? Does anyone even acknowledge them for the most part? No. They don't have any impact. They don't do anything. Right? They don't do anything. You want to hold like them. It's like holding on to a fossil. Right? You want to be a reform conservative Jew, you can hold on to that also. It's never going to work. 70% into marriage. It doesn't work. You can't pick and choose. And you have to know what to do. And that's it.
Rabbi, when it came to geology and it came to the work that I did with the World Digital Magnetic Anomaly Map, and I started to look closely, the Pangea model, it just doesn't work. It's just the east-west separation. And I like how you said when something just doesn't work, it doesn't work. And when you can show it in today's day and age with the data that maybe wasn't available when something was postulated, it doesn't work. I don't know what notions that the Karaites grew out of. But we also have saw the Sadducees fall by the wayside, and more than that, we've saw other nations fall by the wayside. But we see that eternality with the nation of Israel, well, Rabbi. But we're after 1:00 here in the Pacific. Can we wind it down?
We can definitely wind it down. 100%.
Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, person's got to be careful what they see. They have to be careful who they listen to. Right? And if they want to do the right thing, do not pick and choose. Right? look into what the truth is and then stand by it. Okay, it doesn't mean it's going to be easy. Doesn't mean we're not going to have a rocky ride along the road, but at least understand what you're doing, right? And in understanding, we're all in a process. We all want to grow. We all want to do the right thing. We want to be the best Jew or non-Jew that we can be. That's the message.
Wow. Well, you heard it straight, folks. True uprightness is not a buffet. It's not a buffet where you pick this and you pick that. There is a standard for uprightness, and I really appreciate you sharing Pirkei Avos with us, the ethics of the fathers. I know people cannot go wrong if they just integrate ethics. They're not going to argue. They're not going to complain. They're going to understand the things behind why they do what they do. Ethics are just one of those things that is some of the beauty, especially that the way the ethics of the fathers discussed.
One quick thing. The more you understand of what you do, at least in theory, you see the bigger picture. That's when you go through all the other things that you go through in life, it's a whole different world. Putting that into practice. When you put that into practice, whole different world altogether.
Beautiful. Well said, Rabbi. I missed you last week. I'm so glad we were able to have this class today. Are we tentatively on for the same time next week, Rabbi? Tentative? Hashem willing?
100%. We are there. As long as we get a good connection, I got my camera up. We're good.
Looking good. So. Yeah, better. I remember a couple of weeks ago we had the fritz out a couple of times. I'm glad to see we had a great broadcast today. I so appreciate it. So, folks, you can always catch Rabbi Coffman at his website, orthodoxconversion.com, or you can check him out on Facebook or YouTube. He's got several broadcasts he does a week. You can find him on Tanakh Talk, always doing controversial issues there. Great show to catch him there. So, folks, till next week, this is Dan signing out with Rabbi Chaim Coffman. Have a great week.